Chapter 2. At Hogwarts, the sorting hat did its usual business, and everyone was placed into their houses just as Hermione remembered. She remembered something from the train ride, Ron and the rat. She had watched closely as Ron fumbled with his rat, trying to turn it yellow and asking if that's a real spell. But Hermione knew the truth about who that rat really was. With a flick of her hand, hidden beneath the table and perfectly timed during Dumbledore's speech about nitwit, oddment, blubber and tweak, she cast the animagus reversal spell, her movement so subtle no one noticed. The rat's head poking out from Ron's sleeve suddenly transformed, and with a loud crash, a man appeared, Peter Pettigrew, his body landing right in the middle of Gryffindor's feast. He ruined their food, feet in someone's pudding, and other limbs sprawled across the table, knocking goblets and plates everywhere. Chaos erupted as students screamed in confusion and fear, but Hermione, knowing exactly what to do, let out a loud, amplified scream of her own, her voice carrying above the panic. She pointed dramatically, still screaming, drawing attention to the man on the table. In the midst of the frenzy, Hermione cleverly waved her hands as if panicking, but in truth, she was casting powerful, wordless magic. Ropes shot out and bound Pettigrew tightly, his limbs locked, without her even pulling out her wand. Dumbledore, already with his wand drawn, glanced at her, suspicion flickering in his eyes, unsure of what exactly had happened, but knowing Hermione had a hand in it. Feigning more panic, Hermione waved her hands again, and on cue, a vial of Veritaserum soared into the great hall, uncorked itself, and tipped its contents straight down Pettigrew's throat. Hermione shouted dramatically, "Who are you?" Pettigrew, forced to speak the truth, sputtered his real name. "Peter Pettigrew!" Dumbledore froze, shock spreading across his face. The man they had thought dead for so many years, alive and right in front of them. The hall went silent, all eyes on Dumbledore and Pettigrew. As Dumbledore began interrogating Pettigrew, asking question after question, the truth poured out about his survival, his betrayal of Harry's parents, and his alliance with Voldemort. Dumbledore regained his resolve, his sharp blue eyes focused entirely on Peter Pettigrew, now bound tightly in magical ropes, slumped over the Gryffindor table. The hall was silent, waiting in disbelief. Dumbledore stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. "Peter Pettigrew." His words hung in the air like a challenge, disbelief etched into every syllable. "How is this possible? You were declared dead." Pettigrew, still groggy from the effects of the Veritaserum, blinked rapidly. His eyes darted nervously across the hall, but the potion forced him to speak the truth, no matter how much he wanted to keep quiet. His voice trembled as he confessed, I faked my death. I cut off my own finger and transformed into my animagus form, the rat." Gasps echoed through the hall as students realized they'd been sitting next to a murderer in disguise. Ron, pale as a ghost, stared at Pettigrew in horror, glancing at his empty sleeve where scabbers had been just moments ago. Dumbledore's face remained stern, though his mind raced. "Why, Peter?" he pressed, his tone urgent, though controlled. "Why betray your friends? Why betray James and Lily Potter?" Pettigrew's lip quivered, the words spilling out of his mouth involuntarily. I was weak. Voldemort, he found me. I couldn't resist him. He was so powerful, and I was just scared. James and Lily, they trusted me as their secret keeper, and I gave them up. I told Voldemort where they were. I didn't have a choice." At this, the hall fell deathly quiet. Everyone was holding their breath, processing the enormity of Pettigrew's confession. Harry sat stiff in his seat, his fists clenched in anger, struggling to breathe as the man who had caused his parents' death stood there cowardly in front of him. Dumbledore's voice cut through the silence, now sharper, more demanding. "And Sirius Black? You framed him for your crimes, did you not?" Pettigrew nodded, sweat dripping down his brow. Yes, I had to. I had to disappear. I knew the ministry would never look for me if they thought Sirius had killed me. So I blew up the street, killed those muggles. I turned into the rat before they could catch me. They all thought Sirius did it." The hall filled with murmurs of disbelief. Dumbledore's face tightened, but his mind remained focused. His next question came swiftly, like the snap of a whip. "And Voldemort? What happened after his downfall? How have you survived all these years?" Pettigrew's breathing became ragged. I stayed hidden, in my animagus form. I was afraid. But when he started to regain power, I returned to him, to help, to serve him again." Dumbledore's face, though outwardly calm, showed a deep well of emotions just beneath the surface: disbelief, anger, and sadness. The students were now utterly transfixed by the scene, their food forgotten as they listened to every word. Hermione, still standing to the side, observed quietly, her mind racing ahead of everyone else, satisfied that the truth was being laid bare. Dumbledore continued, rapid fire now, not letting Pettigrew rest. "And the Potters' deaths, Voldemort's downfall, what do you know of it? What role did you play beyond your betrayal?" Pettigrew's eyes darted around the room, his trembling voice barely holding itself together. I only led him there. He killed them himself. He tried to kill Harry, but it didn't work. I don't know why. No one knows why. That's why he's been after the boy ever since." At the mention of Harry, all eyes fell on him, sitting stunned and rigid at the Gryffindor table. But Dumbledore didn't pause for reflection. His next question came just as quickly. "And Sirius Black, does he know you're alive? Does he know the truth?" Pettigrew's face went ashen and he stuttered, He knows. He knows I betrayed them. He's been after me ever since, but the ministry thinks he's a murderer. He'll be in Azkaban forever." Dumbledore's eyes flickered with something dangerous, something almost fiery, but he held his emotions in check. "So, all this time, Sirius has been innocent?" His voice grew softer but more deadly, a quiet fury rising. "Yes," Pettigrew admitted, shaking under the weight of the truth. The hall was deathly silent again, students, teachers, ghosts. No one moved, no one breathed. Dumbledore looked deeply into Pettigrew's eyes, searching for any sign of deception. Though he knew under Veritaserum the man couldn't lie. This was it, the truth had been revealed. With a wave of his wand, Dumbledore bound Pettigrew even tighter. His voice now calm, though still laced with disbelief, he turned to the staff. "This man is to be taken into custody immediately. I will personally see to it that the ministry is informed of his crimes." He then faced Pettigrew one last time. "Your fate is no longer in my hands, Peter. The ministry will decide." Before leaving, Dumbledore glanced at Hermione. Though her expression was carefully composed, he saw a glimmer of something, knowledge, perhaps beyond her years, but now was not the time to question it. That would come later. He turned, directing McGonagall and Snape to oversee the containment of Pettigrew for the night. The hall remained filled with whispers, but as Dumbledore left, the weight of the evening's revelations settled over everyone. Hermione, with her mission accomplished, smiled to herself. The first piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. Now it was time to prepare for the next. Hermione, calm and prepared, pulled out a special magical recording device, revealing the entire confession on it. She handed it to Dumbledore, her voice firm but polite as she said, "For the ministry, of course." Before Dumbledore could ask her any of the confused questions he clearly had brewing, Hermione turned on her heel and stormed off to bed, satisfied with how she had handled her first problem. As she grinned, walking up the stairs, she thought of how perfectly everything had played out. Her strategy had been flawless. Back in the Great Hall, Harry and Ron sat in stunned silence, jaws dropped. The whole school was buzzing with whispers and confusion as they finally made their way to their dormitories. Dumbledore, meanwhile, had Pettigrew locked in containment, ready to contact the Ministry in the morning. As the castle quieted for the night, one thought was shared by everyone. What on earth had just happened?